So much for that. Well, joining me now is Washington Congresswoman Pramila Jayapal, a Democratic member of the House Budget and Judiciary Committees. She's also chair of the Progressive Caucus. I feel like we are going straight to the source here as we talk with you because you're so involved with all of this. Quickly, the Halloween deadline before we figure out how to get there. Is that realistic? Are we going to be able to get something done by Halloween? But I don't say we, I mean you.
Well, Alex, it's always great to see you. We are trying to get this done as quickly as we possibly can. Now, I think deadlines are often arbitrary. If you remember, the bipartisan bill took 5 months to negotiate. All said, though, we are trying to get this done as quickly as possible. It does rely on those two senators, the 2% out of the 100%, because 98% of us agree that $3.5 trillion was the number, all the programs that are in there. The president agrees, 70% of the American people agree. But we have two senators, Democratic senators, who are still not on board. So a lot of this depends on the two of them getting together, because they each want slightly different things, and coming back with a proposal of what it is they want to cut. Do they want to cut childcare? Do they want to cut paid leave? Do they want to cut climate change? What is it? Because the price tag comes out of that number. So, the deadline is there. We're working towards it. But of course, deadlines can always shift. And the important thing is we get this done for the American people.
Indeed. AP reports that you told President Biden that his suggestion for compromise was too low. You put your number closer to $3 trillion. How did the president receive that? What did he say back to you?
Well, Alex, the president agrees with the $3.5 trillion number. Remember, this is the Biden agenda. And as he keeps reminding the country, this is a $0 bill at the end of the day, because all of this is going to be paid for. Even if you look at $3.5 trillion, it's over 10 years. Per year, annually, it's 1.5% of GDP. So the president is with us on this. 98% of us are together. There's just two senators that are saying that they think it's too much. And I think it's really important for us to remember that the price tag comes out of what we want to do. And your poll earlier that you showed shows that when the American people understand that we're talking about universal child care, where no family pays more than 7% of their income on child care, or 12 weeks of paid family leave, or fighting climate change with real policies that cut carbon emissions, or health care, providing dental, vision, and hearing benefits for seniors at the time that they are most vulnerable, or lifting up our immigrants. Those are the priorities of the Progressive Caucus, and they are the priorities of the president. That's the president's Build Back Better agenda.
So what are the priorities of Manchin and Sinema? Have you spoken with either of them? Are you clear on what they want?
Well, I have spoken with Senator Sinema. I'm not going to get into the details. I know that Senator Manchin and Senator Sinema have been speaking with the president, but I think this is the part that is frustrating for a lot of people, all of us, because the two of them don't have the same priorities. One of them is very much fine with the tax pieces, for example. Of this, making wealthiest corporations and individuals pay their fair share, which, by the way, Alex, when you add that to the question about how people feel about this bill, the approval goes even higher up, because people want the wealthiest to pay their fair share, particularly after what we've seen with billionaires just raking in the money during COVID. So one of them, however, does not really support that. One of them supports prescription drug pricing negotiations so that Americans don't have to pay more for their prescription drugs. The other one doesn't really support that, but they're not necessarily both being public about it. And I think that is the challenge. The two of them don't agree with each other yet, and 98% of us do, and agree with the president, agree with ourselves, agree with the American people. That's the challenge we're facing right now.
Yeah, you're talking some big hurdles there. Let me ask about something I do know, which is regarding the other progressives. You've talked about the idea of keeping all of the programs, but for a shorter amount of time. And we know that Senator Joe Manchin is behind an idea to shrink the bill by limiting access to every program. He wants to do it for only those Americans who need it most. So how do you feel about means testing? Can you convince Manchin to instead just shorten the length of the programs without it?
Well, that is the Progressive Caucus's position, is that we want all of these 5 priorities that I mentioned in the bill. And if we have to reduce the price tag slightly, it would be through funding for a shorter amount of time, with the benefits accruing as quickly as possible, right? Because we want people to feel the transformational effect of these policies. On means testing, I would just say that the way that most means testing has been structured in this country has been an abject failure because of many factors. One, it erects all kinds of administrative barriers that actually prevent the most needy people from getting the very benefits. If you have so many qualifications that you can't even figure out if you qualify. Second, it actually adds enormous administrative costs because somebody's got to figure out if somebody qualifies or not. And that takes a lot of money. But third, and perhaps, most importantly, the idea that we have simple ways for people to determine a universal benefit and that you don't have a fiscal cliff where somebody making $1 over, right, is suddenly thrown off of a program versus $1 under is very important. That's why a 7% universal cap on childcare is a way of means testing, because if you have a really high income and you have to pay 7% of it out before you get any government assistance, that's a way of pushing out the wealthiest people, while at the same time making sure that 2 school teachers earning $68,000 a year in a very high-cost area like Seattle are not going to be disqualified from that program.
Yeah, you've certainly thought that out. Let's move now to the debt ceiling. The House is set to vote Tuesday on a short-term extension to raise the limit. So that buys more time, certainly, but it does not put a solution there on the table. Take a listen to what Senator Ben Cardin told me yesterday about it.
We're going to make sure we don't default on our debt. And we're not going to be using budget reconciliation because that process is likely to lead to failure. So we're not going to do that. We'll figure out a way to get this done. We're going to make sure that we don't default on our debt.
Do you know how it gets done? Because the senator says Democrats aren't going to use budget reconciliation to raise the ceiling. Republicans have made clear they're not going to help raise it. So how?
Well, Alex, the first thing on this, so that all Americans understand, when we raise the debt ceiling, it's to pay for debts that we already incurred. And you know that the Trump administration incurred $8 trillion in debt over the last 4 years. And now the idea that Republicans are saying they don't want to vote to raise the debt ceiling, which, by the way, has been bipartisan throughout our history. Democrats and Republicans, regardless of who's in charge, have voted to raise the debt ceiling because it's about America and whether people trust us that we're going to pay our bills. But now they're not allowing that to happen. And of course, at the core of all of this, Alex, is something you and I have talked about before, the filibuster. The idea that you have to get 60 votes just to move forward a vote on a bill. So a minority, it's a tyranny of a minority in the Senate, where 40 senators representing a tiny portion of the entire population of the country, because of those particular states, can block even Democrats taking a vote on something as important as the debt ceiling. So I think we need to reform the filibuster. I think that's why Mitch McConnell got nervous at the end, because if we can't even pass the debt ceiling and keep the United States good to its obligations, then that might lead to a reform of the filibuster, which I believe is exactly what Democrats should do. And I think Mitch McConnell got nervous about that and said, all right, let's bring 10 Republicans along so that we can at least have a vote, which only Democrats took, to raise the debt ceiling and push the can down the road until December. Not an ideal situation, but important to do in this moment.
So I'm listening to our conversation, and there are viewers out there who are doing the same. When it comes to reconciliation, infrastructure, debt limit, what's your message to voters, our viewers here, who might be losing confidence that anything's going to actually get done?
Well, that, I think, my message is we will get this done, but we have to hold fast and not let a tyranny of the minority, whether it's, Republicans in the Senate not agreeing to reform the filibuster, or whether it's a minority of senators, 2% of all Democrats in the House and the Senate, not agreeing with the president, not agreeing with the American people. Let's get those 2 to the table. We can deliver both infrastructure. We can deliver the reconciliation bill, the Build Back Better Act. And if we reform the filibuster, Alex, there is much more that we can do. And I really think we're at the point where voters delivered us the House, the Senate, and the White House. If they don't see Democrats delivering for them, then I don't blame them for losing faith. But hang in there right now. We are going to get this done. Keep the pressure on, and let's deliver both these bills. It will be transformative for the country, Alex.
Hey, look, it's a Sunday. Let's say keep the faith. How's that? One more question before I let you go. Your thoughts on the subpoenas that have been set out by the January 6th committee. Depositions are scheduled this week for Steve Bannon, Kash Patel, Mark Meadows, and Dan Scavino. How important is it for these people to testify before the committee? I mean, what do you want to hear from them? And do you think we are actually going to hear from any of them by this time next weekend?
It is absolutely essential that we hear from them, that we get accountability, that we know what happened. This is a bipartisan select committee that is investigating January 6th. And I think it's outrageous that there are still members of the Republican Party that are saying that the election, could have been stolen, not admitting that Joe Biden is the president, and not agreeing that anything even happened on January 6th. So the idea of criminal prosecution, if these individuals don't come and testify, I think is absolutely right on. It's what we need to do. And it's the only way that America is going to find out what happened and get accountability for it and protect our democracy.
Can I ask you, at the top of the show, you heard Julie Sirkin, who was reporting, and she played a series of sound bites from Trump supporters and what they believe has happened and gone on. I described my reaction to it as just being one jaw-dropping listen after the next. How about you? When you hear that kind of talk from Trump supporters and know that those four that we heard from are by far from alone in these kinds of beliefs, how do we combat this?
It is so difficult to listen to that because, of course, I was there on January 6th, Alex. I was in the gallery. I was trapped in the gallery as insurrectionists were pounding on the door, trying to find us, to kill us, trying to find Mike Pence to kill him and Nancy Pelosi. It's stunning to me that people think that this didn't happen, that it was a setup, that it was a deep fake conspiracy, theory thing. I don't even know how to describe the disconnect between the facts and sort of how people are thinking about it. And I blame Donald Trump, of course, but I also blame the Republicans right now in Congress who know much better, who were running for their lives, protected by Capitol Police on January 6th, and yet now refuse to actually say that it happened or to say to Donald Trump, you cannot be the leader of our party anymore. This is a moment of crisis for our country and our democracy. It is also a moment of real reckoning for the Republican Party. Who are they going to be? Just Donald Trump's party or the party of the big lie, or actually standing up, perhaps for different policy ideals, but ultimately standing up for democracy? And I think that's frankly a terrifying thought to me.
I got to tell you, I'm going to put an exclamation point on that. There are those Republicans who even stood up immediately in the aftermath of January 6th, and then they have shrunk since and just gone into the shadow of Donald Trump. Okay, Pramila Jayapal, always good to see you, my friend. Thank you so much. Have a good Sunday.
Thank you, Alex.
So President Biden's approval rating hits a new low in one prominent poll. Up next, the issues hurting his popularity most and what he can do to navigate his presidency out of trouble. Former Obama Press Secretary Robert Gibbs joins us next.
Dignity. It demands that you can do simple things with ease while managing chronic pain. It demands a better understanding of your glucose levels so you can enjoy movie night, and that your heart stays connected to your doctor so you know it's beating as it should. At Abbott, we fight for these moments, developing life-changing technologies because